Hello and welcome to EEG Master. In this video, I'll walk you through the key educational resources on the EEG Master website, including our atlas, competency-based curriculum, and self-assessment tools. Everything shown here reflects what trainees will typically see in their learning environment. A separate video is available to show how registered programs can review trainee progress and evaluate institutional performance. So when the trainee launches the EEG Master website, the main page that they'll come to is our extensive EEG Atlas. And our atlas is arranged broadly by topic, and the trainee can select a category and then further select the category to delve into more specific topics. When they get to the final topic, you can see that it's organized into different categories that provide different ways that the learner can access or review the content. So first we have some written explanations um, that discuss what the finding is, how you might categorize it or review it. That shows examples. One of the other, probably one of the most unique features of the EEG Master website is the EEG viewer. And so this allows the learner to open up scrollable and manipulatable EEGs. And so the learner can come in, they can adjust the settings. So for instance, they can adjust the time base, they can scroll through it by either using their mouse or they can click and drag. They can adjust filter settings to play around and see how things change when you adjust the filters. They can turn the notch off and on, adjust sensitivities and play around with doing that. And they can also change the montage to see how that changes the EEG. They can even actually create their own montage, which will save to their profile. Um, in addition to the EEG viewer, trainees also have access to a wide database of static screenshots, again, organized based off of finding, shows it in different montages, different workspace views, and just gives different types of examples of the same finding. And then finally, we also have a growing database of instructional videos. These are all really brief videos that last about 30 seconds that explain the findings as well. This is an example of lateralized periodic discharges, or LPDs, per ACNS 2021 IC. And so again, these are all created and curated by EEG or epilepsy neurophysiology faculty, and again, explain the findings that are depicted. So the learners have many different ways to review the material. In addition to the actual content, we have practice questions that are organized by overall topic. So for each of the main categories on the EEG Master page, there are practice questions for that topic. And the learner can go in and they can open these up. And I've shown this question before, but there's a question, and then depending on what they answer, they'll get feedback with, why the answer is the correct answer. So the atlas covers a really extensive and diverse range of topics with all sorts of different views. In my experience, one of the biggest limitations of EEG teaching is that you're only teaching from available EEGs. And if you don't have a specific finding that comes across that week, and if your institution doesn't have a large base of teaching EEGs saved or the ability to have a large database of teaching EEGs saved, if you don't have that specific finding, then you can't demonstrate it. So I find myself pretty frequently coming to our atlas, pulling up examples of the page or of the finding, or even a scrollable EEG, and letting the trainees see that way. And so I find that it can be a really good complement to hands-on attending-led instruction. Another feature that we have available for learners is our EEG comparison tool. And so learners can come and can compare essentially whatever topic in our atlas that they want to another topic. So for instance, Say that your learner's having a really hard time distinguishing wickets from focal sharps. You can come and pull up this comparison page and you can show them examples of what wickets might look like compared to focal sharps and discuss what the difference is. And they can compare all sorts of examples on the pages to look at the difference and help them understand. We also have a syllabus that we've designed to help programs that may not have a lot of epilepsy faculty, or if you have learners that are really driven to learn independently, they can come to. And it's a step-by-step curriculum that we have that's module-based, starting with the basics and expanding to more advanced EEG. It's complete with learning objectives per module. Um, the syllabus links you to different areas of the website. So, for instance, in the introduction, if you want to read about montages, you can click it and it'll link you to the actual montage page that explains it. It links to the instructional videos. If there are practice questions that go with the modules, it will link you to that. It'll link you to the Atlas topics to review the Atlas features that we talked about. Um, Sometimes they'll link to external articles such as neurology education articles or the ACNS critical care EEG terminology. All of it is free resources that trainees shouldn't have to pay for. Um, Finally, again, one of the unique features of our website is that we have a pretty extensive self-assessment option for trainees. So in addition to the topic-based questions that we already talked about in the Atlas, we have a EEG of the week that trainees can do. And so there's a new question that comes out every week, and that does get added back into the topic-based practice questions, but learners can go back and work through old questions, and they can do that in different ways. So they can, again, do it by the topic-based questions. These are old EEG of the week questions that have just been put and organized by topic, or they can also use our QBank feature. If they don't want to know, for instance, that I'm working through normal questions, then they can come and they can generate a random test of anywhere from 10 to 25 random questions. They can choose categories if they want. So if they want to work on specific categories, they can put the number of questions in over here that they want to make in the test. They can choose if they want to do this in practice mode, which if they do it in practice mode, they'll see the correct answer and explanation after each question. They can choose to include only new questions or also questions that they've previously seen before. And then they can resume tests that they've started off in or repeated them. So this is again an example of a question. This is what the original question looked like, and here are the question stems, and then I've already answered it. And then once I answered it, it came with the answer EEG to explain it in more detail along with the longer text explanation down here. So these are all assessments that the trainee gets feedback on, so they're more formative assessments. We also have a series of 6 summative assessments. We have 6 25-question tests, which we have aligned with the ACGME neurology residency EEG milestones. And so those are what we initially did is those milestones do not have the milestones don't say which specific grapho elements are part of that milestone. So we conducted a literature review to determine which elements are the most important for trainees to learn, and then we mapped those to the milestones, and then based off of that we developed these tests. And so the beginner tests are meant to assess milestones 2 to 3, intermediate 3 to 4, and advanced tests to help distinguish between milestones 4 to 5. residents or trainees in general don't get feedback on the particular question. They don't find if they got a particular question right or wrong, but what they do have accessible to them is a general report that shows how they did overall on the test. So they get their overall percent correct. They get a measure of performance and how they did locally against other trainees registered with the same institution, as well as how they've done globally. They get a text summary of how they did, what areas they did well in, what areas they didn't get do well in. And then they also get a representation like this. And so it shows, okay, so this resident did really, really well on the ICU background topics, and they can open it up to see more specifically where they did well, but they seem to have struggled more with artifacts. And so for the areas that they struggled well, it'll link them back to the atlas to review, as well as some practice questions on the topic. If they scroll down, they also have two different graphic representation of their performance. Um, it if there had been this is a dummy trainee account, but if there had been another trainee that had taken this test before, I can actually go back and we'll look at the beginner test. The other trainees from this account, from this institution, have taken it, and so they can compare their performance with how the trainees in general have done with global performance. Trainees can also review performance by going to the performance dashboard. And so they can um, review their performance on specific individual tests or whatever combination they would like. And again, it shows them their performance, how the program overall is performing and their percentile within that, and then how everyone is performing across institutions with their percentile. They can open it up to get more specific detail on the individual topics. And then if they scroll down to the end, it shows them all the different tests that they've taken and their overall scores, and they can again access those individual they can access those individual score reports that I just reviewed here.